Hello, welcome, fellow sovereigns. Many years ago, I had a boss who used to say of people who didn't do their job properly, "We may be continually disappointed, Philip, but we should be never be surprised." And on the other way, we may be continually thrilled, and we should never be surprised. And I am. I'm always surprised when one thing fits to another. Totally unrelated things kind of happen together. Maybe I'm making up links that aren't connected, but they just seem to. So, about a week ago, I had a tough conversation. So I'm living in a over 50s complex, and then the manager came up to my door and told me off like I was a child. Really pathetic. Because I had parked my car in what other people had been parking their car for the last 4 years, as far as I knew. But apparently it was somebody else's car park. But anyway, it turned out he'd just changed the thing. But anyway, it's more the nature of the conversation. Because I haven't had an unpleasant or confrontational conversation for years that I can remember. And it was such a shock to have somebody already fuming obviously about something else, and he needed to vent, and so here I was, a wonderful target. And so I got told off, and then he sort of got into my character, how I was always breaking rules, which to him was an insult, to me was a wonderful compliment. And his conversation drifted off onto all sorts of other things, and what a terrible person I was. And it was just such a shock for something so trivial. All I need to do was move my car out and into the next car park spot. It could have been a really simple conversation. So, anyway, it wasn't life-threatening. It was just a conversation out of the blue about something so trivial, but done in such a nasty way. And I got back into my house and I was talking to my partner, and I was quite upset. I was churned up about it. I just thought it was so crazy. Anyway, so I decided to forgive him and to forgive myself, which is the Course of Miracles thing, and to undo and try and see it in another way, and to look at where he'd come from and why he was already angry. He'd had a bad day, and obviously he hates his job, as he has said on some occasions. And so I was trying to look at it and let go my hurt from forgiveness and explanation, and trying to explain it away. And it didn't really work, because, even through the next day, I suppose, it kept coming up. It'd pop up in dreams, and I'd pop up in thoughts, and like, that Barry, it kept nagging at me. And then last night, I happened to watch a video. It was an interview with Tom Ballard, who's the subject of this amazing film about saving 7,000 children from child slavery, so far, his organisation. So the interview was with him, and of course there's the movie about him that's come out now. Something about the silence, The Sound of Silence, I think it's called. He was being interviewed by a guy who I perceived eventually was actually a life coach, or somebody in that, with those skills. And it came up that Tom Ballard himself had actually been an attempt on him and his brother. He was 8 and his brother was a little bit older. Somebody tried to kidnap them. And that pain had stayed with him, and that pain had set him on the way to being a sex trafficking savior, let's say. That's what he in that moment of nearly being kidnapped, there was a fight, a scuffle, and he managed to pull away. And he had sat with that pain, that anger, that fear, that unsafety, all of that stuff, all his life up until whatever he is now. And so he was asked by this interviewer, what was the pain? And part of it was the terrible thought that his brother was going to be taken from him, as well as himself. And so he was trying to explain it away, and he said, and this interviewer said, no, stay with what was the pain. Stay with the pain. Stay with the anger or the unsafety or the dread, the fear of having his brother stolen. Stay with that. And of course, Tom, like most of us, wanted to explain what had happened and all of the things that had happened afterwards and the whys and the wherefore. And he said, no, come back to the back. Just be with that pain right now. And there was this moment. It was this magic moment in the video. And Tom was wafting on. I mean, it was really interesting what he was talking about. But he had volunteered to undo the pain. And so this interviewer was asking him just to stay with it. To stay with it. And don't try and forgive. Don't try and explain it. Don't try and do anything. Just be with the pain in that moment. Even though that pain was 40-something years ago. And he eventually did. He realized what was being asked of him, and he did it. He's very honest and very vulnerable. And there was this moment, this exquisite moment, that Tom just, Tom just went back into his pain, and he stayed there. Without explanation, without anything around it, without elaboration. And he stayed with the pain. And there was this moment that it looked like it dissolved when he acknowledged the pain that it was. And then it was sort of near the end of the interview anyway. But there was that moment, and it was just a stillness, a silence, and I could feel, I'm sure everyone else could feel, Tom just, it's almost like this. Tom had the thought that he had to hold on to the darkness in order to do the job, to save these children from their darkness. And he came to the realization that he didn't need the darkness to do the job of working from the darkness. All he needed was the light that he was. To do that, he needed to stay in the pain. And when he was absolutely in the pain, without elaboration, it dissolved. And the light, and he said this, and you could see it, somehow there was a light that came out of him, that had been held in there by the darkness that he had held on to, by the pain that he'd held on to. And so we all want to explain and forgive and do all these processes and rituals and all sorts of things around stuff that's happened in our lives. However, this little demonstration for this video showed me there is nothing that needs to be done. And in fact, the less that is done, simply being with the pain, whatever it is, feeling lost, feeling insecure, feeling confused, bitter, angry, depressed, being with it honestly in a moment and staying with it and staying with it and staying with it. And God, if you like, the process, the universe, whatever, our own body intelligence allows it to go when we truly acknowledge the pain. So I offer you that for today, for the week. And I wish you peace and all who sail in her.